Bienvenidos, Ushamdi, and welcome Anne Arundel Community College learners from the Spring 2023 semester taking the CTS-233 Section 400 Network Programmability course. This is the Cisco Networking Academy's DEVASC 200-901 Certification Exam Preparation course, and we continue our journey here with continuous integration, continuous development, or the CI/CD pipeline in Lab 6.3.6 using Jenkins. And this is a very, very cool lab. Our focus here is on part 7, where we're actually now going to build an AutoMagic test to test our build of that Python Flask web application that we've created. So let's go ahead and dive over here to our virtual machine where we left off right on the Jenkins screen. Now, remember, the lab is running, or I should say the sample app Python web app is running. So we're going to go ahead and stop that. We're going to say Docker stop sample running. And this will take a second or two. And again, remember that sample running is an alias that we can use to refer to whatever the container ID is of that container when it's running. So now if I was to say Docker rm sample running, and again, we didn't use the --rm to kick off the sample app running Python Flask application. So when I say Docker stop sample running, we still have to say Docker remove sample running. So now what about a Docker PS? What about a Docker PS-A? Yeah, what we would expect, right? Docker PS shows that Jenkins is the only thing we've got running on port 8080, and so we're good to go. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to create a test job. And what the test job is going to do, if I was to pull the dashboard back up, remember previously I pulled up a tab on the web browser, right? So I had to open a tab on the web browser, navigate to localhost /5050 to check to see if my Python Flask web app was running. What we're going to do now is we're going to use a bash shell script. Very, very simple. I think it's 5 lines of code, and you actually saw it right back over here in the window. Let me go ahead and clear that out, and we'll say cat p7, which stands for part 7. And so here is the bash shell script. Again, this is not a Python script. This is a bash shell script. And all it's going to do, it's going to run a curl command here. And if, when it runs the curl to what should be our Flask Python web app, it gets a response back that says, you are calling me from 172.17.01, then, and you got to keep all of that has to be on the same line, right? We cannot put this on separate lines. It's all going to be on the same line. So if this little bash test script is able to successfully run the curl command to our Python Flask web app and get back the text out of the HTTP GET request and the response that it receives back, then we exit with a status of 0, meaning success. And that's what we want. And so we're basically just automating the testing of that Python web app instead of having to pull up a tab and type in the URL. We run this curl request here. And if we do not, if this is false, right? So if that is not true, then, or else, we are exiting with a status of 1. And in bash, anything other than 0 is failure. So my exit status here could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3, I could put 99, 404, whatever the case may be, right? Anything other than 0 is a failure with the bash shell in terms of the status that gets returned after a command gets run. Okay, so we're all set up now. Let's dive in. We're going to get back into the web app here for Jenkins, right? What do we want to do? We want to start a new job which is going to do the test for us. All right, so we're going to click on New Item. We're going to enter in the name here, and I'm just going to call this, so it's Sample App Test, and I'll put in 8675309 because I've used the date already. So it's going to be Sample App Test 8675309. Again, this is a freestyle project right here, and then I'm just going to click OK. Now, once the web app catches up with me, remember, we're going to add a description. So again, if you click on general, nothing's going to happen because you're kind of here already on the general page. So we're going to scroll down a little bit, and here's where we would put in sample app test -8675309, right? And we'll say first run. Okay, so there we go. So we've got in the name here. We can continue to scroll down, right? Because remember, the general tab, I don't have to scroll back up to the top and then click on things. It's just going to bring me back down a little bit lower here. So source code management. Remember, on the actual build job in Jenkins, we selected Git. We put our GitHub repo username, our personal access token in there. This is not that, right? So this is just a shell script, a bash shell script that's going to test the build. So we're not getting it from our GitHub repo, so we're not clicking that. We're going to leave that as none, but it's here in the build triggers area where we're going to say build after other projects are built. So when I click that, you'll notice it pops up here and it says projects to watch. So this is where I tell Jenkins, hey, keep an eye out for builds that might be taking place for sample app build, and we'll use the date, right? Because that was the, I'm sorry. I thought we had a sample app build job that was there. Projects to watch. Yeah, it should be sample app build here, because that is the name of the build. There we go. Okay. So again, I apologize. There was a little lag. It seemed, again, it's lagging a little bit here. So we've got our sample app build, and that was the one that had the date. So that's the build that we're going to run. And if that build runs, Jenkins is watching. And after that project gets built, right, we're going to get down to the build triggers. Where are the build triggers here? We're going to... Come on, web page. It's really lagging here. Down to the build steps, right? So if that gets run, and again, you can see trigger only if build is stable, and that's what we want. And we're going to come down here to the build steps, right? So we're going to add a build step in. We're going to execute a shell script. And so let me go ahead and walk over here back to this section. That way you don't have to watch me type everything out. I can just grab this here by copying, and it looks like we got a little lag there. We'll say copy, and then we'll pop back over here and we'll drop this in. And again, we want to make sure that all of that first line is actually on the first line. So there we go. Okay. All right. Everything looks good there. So we've got our script that's in there. We're going to go ahead and click on save. And we're going to go back to the dashboard. Now, we're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom because we're going to have Jenkins run that sample app build down here. Now, I did some testing. I wanted to make sure that I showed you. So take a look here. This was another test that was run that I intentionally put an error in. Because these little, you might be curious, like, well, what's the little sunshine thing mean? Well, the sunshine thing means, hey, everything is cool, right? The thunderbolt, cloud, rain type thing means that something's bad, something failed. All right, so here is our sample app build. You can see that it's right here. It wants us to scroll down to the bottom. Now, we could click on this and go back in, but we could also just kind of come all the way over here, and that says schedule a build. And we can see the last build took 1.6 seconds. So all I need to do is click on this arrow, and it says that the build is scheduled. Now, we should see some things refresh here. And again, it actually asked me to refresh. And there we go. Okay, good. So the auto refresh took place. So what do we have next to sample app test? We've got the, the yellow sun showing 100%. Sample app build shows 11 minutes ago. But did anything refresh here? So let's kind of click refresh. Looks like the auto refresh may not have, there we go. Yeah, the auto refresh wasn't doing it for us. So I just click refresh up here at the top. So there's the sample app build. That's what we ran, right? Took 3 seconds. It ran 28 seconds ago, the 6th time we've run it. And take a look here. The first time that this got run, our sample app test bash shell script, right? Okay, so what can we do? Let's click on sample app test because we're going to dig in here. And we want to take a look. We're going to come down to the bottom here if the web page catches up. And you can see we've got these permalink sections, right? So now it's been 41 seconds since this ran. Everything looks legit here, right? So let's click on the last build link there. And here it's going to show us that, yeah, everything worked. Build 1 worked. Now, what would you see? And again, I intentionally kind of broke the other one. And actually, you could click on the console output as well. We could say view as plain text. But again, here's what we're doing, right? So here is the sample app got built, right? That triggered the running of this bash shell script that we created and created a job for. And what is it doing? It's running the curl command out to that URL. We're grepping to see if we got that back. Did that happen? Yes. Exit 0. Status success. Now, what happens if that doesn't work? Let's go back to the dashboard. We'll scroll down here to the bottom. Let's click on our rainy day, right? And this was the one I left double quotes out intentionally, forcing an error to take place. So let's check and see what happens. So I clicked on that. We'll come down to any of the runs, right? I ran it through twice just to make sure that we would, that we would see those errors. And let's take a look at the console output here. So we can see something's wrong, and it's going to give me the error, unterminated quoted string, failed to execute shell, because I was missing some double quotes. And so this is what you would see if you got an error. And Scout's honor on this one, I definitely forced this to happen so that we could see an error to make it, try to maybe add some value in here to see, well, what would I do if this breaks? All right, well, let's go back to our Jenkins dashboard. That wraps up part 7. And so now we're going to jump into the final part in the next video, part 8. We are going to create a pipeline in Jenkins. Some awesome stuff here. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.